just where you are in the country. I think a bit of talking and turning and could probably change people's opinions.
You're listening to Delta Pirate Radio.
It's a subject that will always have rugby fans arguing with each other.
Thanks for tuning in to the Ruckhead Room. Today on the phone, we have Lawrence Ross from the Alberta Rugby League. We're going to be talking to him for a few minutes about what he represents, what that organization is all about, and again, in hopes of just spreading the love of the sport of rugby through Canada. So, Lawrence, how are you today, sir?
I'm good, thanks. How are you?
I'm very good. So, tell me a little bit about Alberta Rugby League. Like, I was confused at first. I wasn't sure if it was a specific team, but I guess it's like an umbrella organization. What exactly is it?
So just to give you a little bit of background on kind of rugby league and its progression in Canada, it's been going on kind of for a few years over in Ontario, and then over in BC. It kind of started a domestic league probably about 5-6 years ago now.
Okay.
And as a kind of import, myself coming over from England, I was looking for opportunities to actually kind of play rugby league over in Canada. So initially I was taking myself over to BC and to play in the league there. And then I kind of thought, well, this is a lot of travelling, going over to BC kind of every weekend in the summer. I'll try and make a crack of it and try and start kind of rugby league in Alberta. So we started kind of the association with the initial kind of option to actually play as the Alberta Broncos, which was going to be a kind of provincial men's kind of full team. So we started off playing a few games against BC and a couple of touring sides that came through from Australia.
Nice.
And we've been going. Yeah, it's gone pretty well so far.
So basically, so if I understand you right, so you basically have created this. This is something you started out of the necessity and out of your love of rugby. You basically have founded this organization out there.
Pretty much, yeah.
Excellent.
There's kind of a few of my friends have kind of helped along the way. So it's kind of been a group effort. And then kind of really kind of got going kind of a lot more kind of structured last year with the introduction of the Canada Ravens,
Yep.
Which is their representative women's team that played in the World Cup in the Commonwealth Nines. And so that kind of introduced kind of all the ladies coming into the game. So we actually became a bit more structured last year, where we had games between Edmonton and Calgary initially.
So what's your season? What's the schedule like? Now, you mentioned Ontario, Alberta, in BC. Do you guys play back and forth between the provinces, or kind of do you have like sort of an intramural province thing going on, and then you guys meet in championships at like a finals? How does that work?
So yeah, I mean, like I say, the progress has been kind of over the last couple of years. Basically, Ontario and BC have structured domestic club competitions, and then their provincial teams kind of play touring sides and what have you. From an Alberta point of view, we're starting the domestic club scene kind of this year. We're going to have kind of Edmonton versus Calgary and possibly 2 Calgarian teams actually this year.
That's
on
excellent.
on both the men's and the ladies' side. And we're kind of developing it through nines competitions as well to get more involvement and bring new people to the game.
Nice.
From a kind of national body point of view, we're actually looking at creating a national championships this year, because we're kind of very aware that kind of we've got these 3 pockets of provinces playing rugby league in Canada.
Yep.
But we're not particularly structured to actually play against each other very often.
Mm-hmm.
We've had 3 games between Alberta and BC over the last 3 years. And obviously with the travel involved, it's kind of quite hard to schedule. But that's something that we want to promote, being kind of the 2 provinces close together. It's kind of cheaper to drive, obviously, rather than get on a plane over to Ontario and things.
Yeah, Canada's kind of big, eh?
Yeah,
it kind of works against you. Yeah, but not to interrupt, but how have you been? How's it been going for you? Like, I mean, has it been a struggle? Are things falling into place fairly easily? Are you finding that Canadians are welcoming the game, or do you find that like yourself, a lot of people are from the UK that are now here? That is it everybody, or is it still just mainly UK people that are living in Canada that are interested?
I'd say it's kind of a bit of a mix.
Okay.
Kind of from BC, they kind of have quite a few imports come into play, kind of Australians and Kiwis and things. Whereas the kind of participation level, in Alberta has been mainly Canadians, actually, which is something that's kind of pleased me. It's kind of obviously kind of Canadians understand kind of NFL or CFL, so it's kind of quite an easy switch to actually watch rugby league and kind of see how the game flows, compared to rugby union, which is kind of a lot more kind of rules and different laws and bits and pieces going on, which is a little bit confusing to kind of the novice watcher.
Understood. So BC, actually, I'm glad you mentioned BC has imports. I think I've read some of that stuff. Something I'm interested in, because my wife and I, years ago, a bit of our background, we used to love rugby, but in Canada, all that we had exposure to was the New Zealand All Blacks whenever they would play somewhere, and so we started following that. And then
Sure.
the cable companies changed it, so you had to. I think turned out to be $15 or $20 just for one channel to get that, and we just said no. So we dropped out of rugby for a while, and then we started picking it up the World Cup, I think, a few years back, and then we found out Toronto was having a team, which was amazing, and so we're seasons ticket holders to them, and there's a great community surrounding them. A lot of their players, well, actually, I think all of their players this year are, I guess you could say, imports. And I'm curious, what do you think? Because I've had some discussions on other podcasts, and some people are saying it might take as long as 2 decades for sort of the Canadian content to come up in that sort of that forum. And I think that making connections between organizations like yourself and BC, and I think Ontario Rugby League is connected to the Wolfpack some way. There's something's going on. I think that with a bit of work, there could be a genuine pool of talent that is unrecognized in this country. And I would do you think it would be 2 decades before you start to see maybe 5 or 6 players on an international team of rugby league, or do you think that it could be moving along quicker or slower? What do you feel? What do you think?
It is kind of a bit of a struggle to actually kind of obviously bring a new sport into the mix. Kind of in Alberta, we have the issues of kind of like we have a small window of actually being able to play rugby outside. Just because of the weather and things, and that means that we're obviously competing with kind of people wanting to go camping and wanting to play rugby union, what have you. So there's obviously like a lot of options for kids or kind of adults to get involved with different sports and activities. So it is a struggle.
Yeah.
But if we actually kind of work together and kind of get into schools and things and start kind of showing the kids kind of, hey, this is a new sport. It's kind of like football, where you have the 6 tackles and then you have to turn over the ball and things. It's kind of the pickup levels should actually be pretty quick.
Yeah.
It's also going to take years and years to actually get up to the levels of kind of the superpowers in rugby league of Australia and New Zealand, England.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay.
It's just kind of the nature of the beast. Kids in England are playing rugby or soccer from young ages, whereas over in Canada we have kids playing hockey and wanting to be the next Sidney Crosby. So kind of breaking that mold to a certain extent is going to be tough.
I have to, you know what, and I'm glad that I asked you that question, and that was a great answer, because I have to concur with you there. Like, yes, like everybody in Canada has, hockey. Like, you come out, and you played in the streets in the wintertime. It's, I have to, again, concur that it is probably going to be a long haul before we see a majority of Canadian players and on the teams that are playing here in Canada, I guess. But sorry, go ahead.
But having said that, there is a rich kind of talent pool over here of athletes, just generally, whether it's playing rugby union or rugby league. There's some really committed athletes that are talented and fit. So it's kind of for a top-level athlete, we have a guy from BC that's actually involved with the Wolfpack, Quinn Nguati.
Oh, you know him? Yeah.
I don't know him too well, but he's.
Sorry, I was actually looking at my wife and saying, "Oh, do you know him?" Like, because she recognized the name. Yeah. Oh, sorry about that.
Okay. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah. So he's a young guy. He's 18, 19 years old and things, and he's got all the athletic ability. So it's nice to see that he's been involved with the Wolfpack and he's actually kind of flying the flag for Canada. Yeah. It'd be nice to see more guys obviously involved with the Wolfpack and getting that professional exposure.
Yeah.
I'm actually involved with Canada Rugby League Association as well. As kind of we have limited numbers of kind of willing volunteers.
Yeah.
So I'm actually involved on the national level as well. So we've had a few programs where we actually sent players over to Australia to play with teams down there and actually kind of develop those skills. And we've got 2 guys going over to play for Akili Cougars, kind of in the junior setup, and just kind of get some exposure for a couple of months, just to kind of learn how kind of the professionals do it and how kind of countries where they're a little bit more advanced down the road, how they kind of perform and how they train and everything else, and get that experience to bring back to Canada. So fingers crossed we can kind of understand that it's going to take a long time, but try and speed it up in areas that we can.
Yeah, actually, the Ravens, when I spoke to them on the podcast, they were doing something very similar. How do you find that things are in Australia and that when you go down that way? How are they? Are they receptive to the Canadian effort or supportive?
Yeah, they are. Yeah. I think majority of people involved with rugby league are very kind of keen to actually kind of help the development of the game. I know from a touring team kind of point of view, flying over to Canada and kind of going to the mountains and playing a little bit of rugby league and things on the side is a pretty attractive concept. So we have that advantage. People want to come from miles around to come to West Edmonton Mall, go to the water park. So
actually, that's funny. That's very true, though. Jumping back. So we talked about getting it into the schools and into the younger age groups and stuff. So is there any outreach in place now? Like, I guess is the term like almost like an academy set up to start bringing younger players in, or at least keying people's interest or information, giving them information that this is now here, like rugby has landed in Canada and it's a great sport. Is there anything happening in that way?
So I know that Ontario Rugby League are actually running some schools programs. I think that's kind of associated with the Wolfpack. I think they're running kind of junior camps and things before matches. Mm-hmm. So we're planning on doing something similar over the summer. Get involved with the schools and come in for like little taster sessions. We've had a couple of training sessions with some of the schools here during the summer last year, and the kids ranged from probably about 12 years old up through to about 15 years old. Mm-hmm. And they just loved it. They just kind of, it's a good game to kind of just release the energy, I guess, on a summer's afternoon. Just like, here you go, here's the ball, and just run.
And that's and that's really what's, I think, paramount to the what we talked about is getting the roots put down and reaching out into the community, the younger community, the schools. Pretty much what you said. That's got to be in place. So, how can people get involved, and how can people help you?
I mean, if anybody's wanting to volunteer and help kind of on the association setup side, just kind of follow us on Facebook or send us a message on Facebook. We've got a couple of groups there. And then we've got the wider CanadaRugbyLeague.com website, which is lots of links through to kind of BC, Ontario, Alberta Rugby League, and all our contact details are on there if you want to get involved or come down and play. We're obviously very receptive of new guys, girls coming in to play or help out where they can.
Actually, we checked out that website yesterday. Yeah, it's very very good. Did you have something to ask? Not to put you. Okay, sorry. I thought my wife wanted to ask something. Sorry, but I guess not. So okay. So what is give us your website again, if you don't mind?
So we actually don't have the website. We just have the Facebook group.
Okay.
So we have the Alberta Broncos Rugby League Facebook group.
Okay.
And then we just use the wider Canada Rugby League .com website just to kind of centralize all the provinces and make it easier for somebody that is kind of fresh coming into Canada. They just have to search the one website and then they get all the information across the country.
Yeah, we'll actually put links into this. That's why we're doing it this way, is in post-editing. We don't have a producer, like it's her and I, and doing it live, we need a third person to do all that stuff. So we figured we record this. The quality usually turns out a lot better than streaming live, so we'll add all that information in there. I'm just trying to think, okay, so what's coming up? What's a day for you what's going on for you next week? What's happening?
Next week, so we're kind of in training mode at the moment. Okay. Our first sessions of the summer, we actually have New Zealand universities coming over.
Very nice.
They're going to play. This is on the ladies' side of the game, so like senior women. Mm-hmm. So they're going to be playing a game against the BC Storm over in Vancouver, and that is scheduled for late June. I think it's the 27th of June. Don't quote me on the date, but I think that's where we are. And then they're going to be driving across the mountains and coming to Calgary to play a Alberta ladies side. Scrub that. It's play a Canada select side. So we're actually predominantly having girls from BC and Alberta, but then we're going to have a couple of girls come in from Ontario to play the game.
Great.
It's not 100% finalised yet. We just need to kind of finalise the actual match date.
Okay.
It's looking like being June 30th at the moment.
Okay.
But just for kind of availability of players, because obviously we share kind of rugby union players with rugby league players, and we have a few players that are actually in a camp for the Alberta Wolfpack from the union side that weekend. So we're trying to schedule it a little bit easier to actually have our best players available.
That's great.
So,
will there be any coverage at all of that? Can we find it on YouTube, or will it be streaming on Facebook?
Potentially, yeah. I need to look into the details.
Okay.
Normally we have kind of, at the very least, we video all our games and put them on YouTube.
Okay, that's great. Well, actually, I'll start looking at that and linking to that.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's the Canada Rugby League YouTube channel.
Okay, great.
So we've got the games on there, and we actually have kind of a Thomas that has a nice video tower, and he loves his gadgets, so he loves to
Does he have
video
a drone?
all the games for us.
Does he have a drone?
I think he does actually have a drone, but he hasn't cracked it out yet.
Oh man, I want a drone.
But yeah, we'll see how that goes. But then kind of after those games, we're going to be kind of scheduling nines tournaments throughout the summer.
Okay.
Basically kind of in and around kind of the rugby union schedule.
Yep.
Just to make sure that we're not having any clashes to actually optimize kind of players' availability.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, it's the issue of the times at the moment. We have to kind of compete for kind of players and fields and everything else.
How are you finding that? Like, I mean, again, and that's actually, I'm glad you brought that point up. Field time, how do you find it? Because you're competing against, soccer, baseball, football, like everything. How do you find getting time on the field? Is it easy to do, or is it convoluted?
Yeah, it's not too bad actually.
Okay.
Kind of, we've had some good games on kind of the what's it called, the turf fields.
Yeah.
So that kind of helps us, and that's kind of one of the angles that we're going to utilize. Rugby union season over here runs through to kind of end of September. So we're looking at kind of scheduling some games into October and potentially actually having indoor games at the University of Alberta. They've just kind of financed a dome over their field, which they put up over the winter.
Excellent.
And so if we can finance that, we'll find some sponsors to kind of cover the cost potentially, and kind of schedule some games throughout the winter, which would obviously help us out trying to find players from rugby union to come and play. Give it a try.
See, I was talking to an individual at one of the Hornets games, and I guess in Canada, I don't know if in Ontario, let's say, he made a point about that they cannot get on the field officially until May 2 for a weekend, where that's what he said, I believe, right, Aaron?
Yeah,
And so you're it's not that way in the UK, right? Like you play all year round outside or whatever. Like there's not a season that you can get specific to getting onto a field, I guess, right?
Yeah, pretty much. Like when I was back in England, you'd generally play rugby union during the winter,
Yeah.
and then rugby league would take over during the summer.
Actually, that's what I said. Yeah.
Yeah, so you have the advantage that you can play kind of both sports, as it were. BC have that advantage. They have like a autumn season for rugby union, and then they break for Christmas, and then they come back in the spring and play rugby union again. But then the summer is free, so that they have potential of 3 rugby seasons during the year.
They have depending on where you are in BC, it's a fairly moderate climate. I'm actually from British Columbia originally, but I'm from Kitimat, which is about 200 miles from Alaska, so it's they get snow. But
for sure.
Okay, we're at the 20-minute mark, Lawrence. I think we're gonna start to wrap things up. Aaron, was there anything?
Sure.
No, just good luck. You said before about changing the mindset, and I agree that's going to be a bit difficult. Like decades ago when I was in high school, they would let you out early for the football games, but I didn't know we had a rugby team until the yearbook came out, and it's like, oh, hey, look, there's a picture for a rugby team. So, and I hear there's probably even less money spent on sporting and after school activities like that now. So. It is a bit of a challenge, but hopefully it is a great game, and once people see it, I think they do fall in love with it. So
that's just one thing to comment on. My wife is actually involved with the U of A, and they have a athletes academy there for rugby union specifically. But they're seeing that the numbers of kind of interested parents and things are just increasing over time, because I think rugby is kind of now on the map, just generally as a sport, whether it's rugby union or rugby league. And kids are actually seeing all these superstars playing in these big stadiums, and they're like, hey, I want a piece of this, and I want to go and do this. So I think the future is bright, but it's just going to take a bit of effort, I think.
And I think you said about the kids and that, and I found at least with rugby league and that, there seems to be more of a connection with their fans in that, because you wouldn't go to a hockey game, and after a hockey game you wouldn't see the hockey players come and shake all the fans' hands and go have a beer with them, and you see that more with the rugby league. They hang out after the game and mingle a bit, which I think helps build that connection with their fans.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of one of the attributes of the sport. It's like everybody's kind of wants to pitch in and help. Everybody tries to stay humble, and that's kind of one of the beauties of rugby. It's a big family atmosphere. Coming to Canada, and I didn't know anybody when I came to Edmonton. The first thing I did was find a rugby club, and then I instantly have a family and friends to help me out and show me around town and things, take me out for a beer.
That's excellent.
It's a good sport.
Although I should point out, we don't actually see those kids in the pubs, Aaron.
True.
No.
There's no children coming to the pubs with the teams.
No, but they take time to get their pictures taken with the young fans as well as the older ones.
I agree. Yeah, completely. And that's it too. Like, because we have some local sports that we've supported over the years, and I mean, unless you went to a specific function with the CFL, my entire life I supported them to a point. I never shook a player's hand. I never saw anybody, you know what I mean? Autographs. Like I had something done, but I had to go to a special event for that. Okay, Lawrence, thank you so much, sir. This is
no problem.
And give thanks and a hello to, I believe you said it was Thomas, your counterpart. Yeah. So just a quick question again. Where were you from in England again? I forgot. Sorry.
So I grew up in Sussex, down south of England.
Okay.
But my family's originally from Dundee in Scotland.
Okay.
So I'm a bit of a mix.
Excellent. Is there anything you wanted to ask before we go, sir?
No, just say thank you for kind of giving us a call, and hopefully we can touch base in the future and kind of catch up and make it a kind of a bit of a regular thing, maybe.
Okay, don't hang up yet. I'm going to just say,
Sure.
Okay, so this podcast is over. Thanks to Lawrence for calling in and talking to us about Alberta Rugby League. And we look forward to great things happening out there and right across the country. Aaron, anything? Okay, so we pause that.
And could probably change people's opinions.
You're listening to Delta Pirate Radio.
It's a subject that will always have rugby fans arguing with each other.